Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking this journey with my novel. I'm so glad to answer these questions for your online group. I'm thrilled that this is a selection for this particular club. I also want to thank you for the very thoughtful questions. So I'm just going to go right ahead into it. So, question number one essentially asks me about any instances of discrimination I might have experienced personally. And the one that immediately comes to mind, and it's probably because I'm a teacher, and it's a story that I also share with my secondary students, is one of a teacher not believing that a particular task was written by me. So she accused me of plagiarism, which is essentially stealing someone else's ideas and claiming them as my own. And that really disillusioned me in a profound way. It taught me very unfortunately that I could not trust all the adults in my life who were meant to protect me, who were meant to mentor me, who were meant to, help me thrive academically and into my future. So the positive thing is that she was able to verify that the work was indeed my own by going and speaking to some of my former English teachers, and came back and changed the failing grade to a B, which felt like an insult to injury, as we say here. So she couldn't even bring herself to assign an A, which I knew that particular writing task deserved. So that was quite a visceral experience, causing me to internalize how white people did not expect a whole lot from me. I was one of the few students of color in that particular advanced placement class. And I realized that I would always have to be proving myself in a way that my white peers didn't have to. And I have carried that. And it's something that, can be a constructive thing when it drives me to be successful. But emotionally, it's exhausting, having to prove that you belong in a particular space, that you belong in the room. So that would be the most tangible example of the kind of discrimination that I experience. And I'm sharing that also because it's during those formative years, being a teenager already comes with a host of other issues. And then to, again, have a teacher whose care you've been placed in doubt you and suspect you and send you the message that you just didn't belong was pretty devastating for me. The second question relates to the hijab issue. I must say that I'm so interested in the story of Sylvia Romano, whom I didn't know anything about until my book was released in Italy. And so her name has come up, which is really interesting. I think her particular story really demonstrates how sensationalized Islam can be, which is quite unfortunate. I think my novel reveals just how human Muslims are, especially with Afaf, a visibly hijabi woman. In terms of my own experiences, the sort of perpetual experience that I've had are the really unwanted, inappropriate questions of why I don't wear hijab, and why are other women wearing hijab? Is it because their husbands, their fathers are forcing it on them? The problem is that when you are wearing hijab, you are going out into the world every day, and you are, visibly relating the message to others that you are Muslim. And what is not always clear is that it's a choice for so many of these women. Someone who is Catholic, someone who is Christian, does not have that sort of burden every day that they leave their home. So for me, it's quite an extraordinarily unique experience for visibly Muslim women. And I consider the act of wearing hijab an incredibly personal choice. And I consider it a brave choice, in a country like the US and in some other countries, European countries. So I was hoping that in my book, I would have been able to offer an intimate glimpse into the world of one hijabi woman. I didn't want, Afaf to be representative. So in terms of myself, as I mentioned earlier, it's those, really, unwelcome questions about my faith and my background that, white individuals or people who are not Arab or Muslim don't have to deal with. And those are not always aggressive, but they definitely, can change, the tone of a professional meeting, especially if it's a first one. And it really makes me feel unsafe, Fortunately, because, again, not being visibly Muslim. In fact, some people don't even guess that I'm Arab, which says a lot about the stereotyping that happens. I am not having to, daily face the kind of discrimination that Afaf does when she finally makes the decision to wear the hijab. Question number three asks me about the novel and its origin from difficult ideas, and me feeling an urge to create a sort of coming to peace with those difficult ideas. I do appreciate the familiarity with Code of the West, which was my short story collection. I have to say that in La Tua Bellezza, the beauty of your face, I wanted to be sure that the ending was not a neatly packaged, everybody feels great again. It's a happy ending. I'm quite frankly not interested in that because that's not the reality of these particular characters. However, Afaf returning to the school certainly symbolizes hope, and maybe that's where this idea of peace might come from. The fact that, she's on a quest to find answers to why this particular heinous crime unfolded in her school is also, I think, a symbol of hope. We want to get closer to truth in order to change our environment, I think, and Afaf attempts that. I don't think, though, she is feeling an enormous amount of peace, so to speak. But I think, the resignation, she might be feeling sort of shields her from, any, future aggression, because she really has experienced the worst kind of violence imaginable. And I think that has sort of hardened her. So I'm not sure that peace is quite the idea I had in mind. In fact, I feel like it's really open ended. I like to think that beyond the book, if we imagine Afaf in our world, she definitely becomes stronger. But, she is still carrying the weight of this really horrible violence that immediately entered into a space that was meant to be safe. And, her job of protecting the students had been so horribly challenged. And that's something that she will need some time to reconcile for sure. So I think besides the novel, all of my stories offer at least the potential for change. Is it always hopeful? Not always, because I don't think it's my job to offer an audience hope. I think writers of color like myself, there's that demand on us, to do that, and I have put down that burden because it shouldn't be my responsibility. Fiction allows me to explore really difficult issues, to raise questions, and I hope that readers will feel changed after taking the journey in my stories and in my novel. That is the best that I can hope for. So, question number 4 concerns Majid, Afaf's brother. And I thought it was so interesting. I had not gotten this question yet from readers. Is he gay? No, he is not. I think it's interesting that this question of his sexuality is posed because I think it speaks to how Islam again is regarded as a an extreme religion, which it is not, and so Majid rejecting it, based on sexuality, I think is an interesting theory, but that's not at all what I had intended. I was interested in Majid representing the sort of secular nature of Arabs. I think Islam is conflated with a lot of negative things, but it's also conflated with being Arab, which is not always the case. So you can be Muslim and not be Arab or even from the Middle East, as we know. But Majid represents the sort of secular Arab, who, like, many people, rejects organized religion. We do appreciate, I hope, by the time we get to Afaf's journey, especially to Hajj, that it's more than just an organized religion for her. It really is, the community that gives her a sense of belonging. For Majid, he was able to thrive by following the sort of white establishment rules, being a good student, being a good athlete. But he does definitely support Palestine. He's in solidarity, but he's been able to separate religion. And because of Baba's history of alcoholism and what Majid or part of what Majid blames for Mama's discontent, I think it's easy to appreciate why Majid, rejects Islam because it's something Baba has espoused, and Majid rejects Baba. So the short answer is no, Majid is not gay. So question number 5 relates to the shooter, and I appreciate you feeling that he is credible, that he's developed. And the question about, was it difficult for me to step into his shoes? It's always a little strange to admit how much I enjoyed writing the shooter. In fact, it was the shooter who I saw very clearly when I started this novel. Afaf's character did not even emerge until a second draft. So I had other characters in mind that just didn't work. But the shooter, I could see very distinctly. I definitely did some research, but I wanted to make sure that I gave myself some time to develop this particular character from a very human standpoint. So I didn't want the research to sort of muddle that. And anything that I had a question about in terms of authenticity, I would then, go back to my research. So for me, the killer is just so symbolic of my interest and my investment in stories of where we come from. I was incredibly devoted to showing the journey of Afaf and how she comes face to face with the shooter. But I also wanted to spend time with his point of view because he was not born a killer. He was not born racist. So I wanted to make sure that I gave my audiences a an intimate view of him, maybe not as intimate as Afaf because she obviously has more page time, but to get close enough to him to understand, not to justify. So, I did not want, readers to think, I was somehow defending his actions. I don't think that that's what emerges at all. What I'm interested in is all the forces and all the choices that carry him to this point in time, because there were things that were definitely choices that he made, but those choices were shaped by loneliness, a sense of alienation, losses, a few that were similar to Afaf's, own story. And he seemed pretty ripe for radicalization, which is also what the research indicates. So I was interested again in the very human stories, without justifying, but understanding where we come from and where we're going. In terms of it being a sort of nightmare, as you call it, a nightmare come true, that is actually, I think, quite an appropriate assessment. Someone like me who's been teaching for over 20 years, I have been more preoccupied with gun violence, I would say, in the last 10 years, and in the last few years, quite dramatically. So it is a preoccupation. However, I want to make the distinction between a story that I wrote from that collection, Code of the West, in which a young boy who's been so horribly bullied makes a decision to bring a gun to school and to confront his classmates. That's different from Afaf's story, and the shooter who enters the building is coming from a place of fear, hate mongering, bigotry. It's quite distinct from a young person bringing a gun into a school, which still, to me, reinforces this idea of all the stories that we're carrying, all the things that shape us, and then influences the choices that we make on a daily basis, whether, it's the decision to bring a gun to school and to confront those who we feel have injured us, or to bring a gun as a grown man into a school and to slay innocent people who represent something so erroneous, in the particular shooter's mind. Question number 6 has to do with the Arab-Israeli conflict and if I would have wanted or needed to have said more in this novel. No. The novel really has served its purpose and my vision of following the journey of Ataf Rahman, the daughter of Palestinian immigrants. Even though she has inherited that sort of generational trauma from her parents, those two being Palestinian natives. It really is focused on some other themes. So I was not worried that I had left anything out in terms of that political backdrop. And I appreciate you noting that my collection of short stories contains narratives that address that a little more directly. In terms of the Palestinian literature not reflecting a strong sense of hatred or condemnation, I'm not sure that that has been my experience reading Palestinian contemporary writers. The ones who I admire and the ones who I follow spend a lot of time constructing characters who have been largely ignored, made invisible, marginalized, treated as subhuman beings. And because of the intimate look into their lives, I think by that particular nature, does the condemnation of Israel emerge quite naturally. I think when it comes to fiction, writers have to create that balance of addressing, political issues in a way that's not pedantic and sort of, performative in terms of protest. I think, and I don't want to speak for others, but speaking for myself, I want to make sure that I am presenting, a very authentic voice and point of view. And, I think, again, the writers who I followed have been successful in doing that. In terms of this idea of right or wrong, where Palestinians are concerned, it really is a matter of basic rights. And I think their denial of these very basic rights has incredibly gone on for what is approaching a century. And I definitely have been, thinking about the occupation and that particular political conflict in other projects that I'm working on. But in terms of La Tua Bellezza, again, my vision was quite sufficient in terms of what I wanted to present in terms of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. But I do appreciate that question. So, question number 7 asks me about how I think the novel is going to be received in other countries. I do appreciate the vote of confidence from the group that there is great and growing interest there in Italy. That makes me so happy and so proud. I think it's going to be well received. I really am hoping that this book is going to reach Middle Eastern countries and be translated in Arabic. That would be, the highest form of praise for this book for me personally. So I hope it's on that particular journey. What I think is so interesting about the question too is that I'm presenting the story in what you call a lighter, friendlier, closer way, that there are more colors than bloodstains. I really appreciate that. I think it really speaks to how wonderful fiction can be. I think we are, so lucky to have stories and books that disarm us, that invite us in the way that, really great books do. and then have us confront these very difficult issues. So, I just said that I try not to be pedantic. I try not to preach in my books. So fiction does definitely allow me a chance to, create this particular world that's going to be very familiar to some folks and is going to be a new world for others. And those cultural markers like food, the traditions, the rituals, allow us to, get closer to these particular human beings. And I'm glad that those are also enjoyable aspects of the book. And quite frankly, they also allow us a sort of buffer, from things that are very disturbing, especially when we think about the shooter. So whenever we leave his particular point of view for a while, we're back into Afaf's and we're immersed, in her world, in her culture. And of course, she's facing some very difficult things. But, we get maybe some relief. But then we get back to the shooter. And that was quite deliberate because I wanted to make sure that my readers did not forget about that daily threat of bigotry and Islamophobia and that violence. So the final question comes full circle with the very first question, which I really appreciate. This idea of literature is offering salvation and healing. And yeah, I absolutely believe in that. For me, fiction has always been a place to explore these really difficult things that plague us as a society, but it's also a space to investigate how we overcome these terrible things, and how we become stronger, and how hope isn't ultimately shattered beyond repair. So Afaf has come to a sense of herself, has been able to enjoy a sense of belonging, and has been able to thrive, as we see her thrive as an educator and then a principal later, and also as a mom, as a wife, because of religion. But it's not because of the organized, ritualistic aspects of Islam. It's because that initial circle of women embrace her where she is at, without question, without judgment. And that is something that I hope stays with readers. This idea that as human beings, we hunger for love, we hunger for belonging, and we will naturally search for those things, first from our parents, from our siblings, from within our families. And when that fails, we start to seek that outside of the immediate nuclear family. And when we don't find it in these other places, we're just sort of floating through life and not really fulfilling, our full potential, and the different, and really wonderful and unique talents that we possess, that we just need others, to help us discover and to cultivate. So for Afaf, Islam is definitely a journey that she takes to a greater understanding of herself. But her identity isn't a fixed Muslim identity. I see it as quite a living thing. And when I think about the experience of the shooting, that becomes another component in her identity, something else that continues to shape who she is. What I think this book accomplishes is that Islam is not, this violent, fear, provoking and fear mongering kind of religion. I hope readers are going to be able to step away and see that, there is just so much more than, what mainstream media has fed them. Um, and that is really the best I can wish for, outside of again, this wonderful value of fiction, um, revealing the stories that we carry through our lives, and to critical moments in time, especially the time that we're in right now. I want to thank you so much again for reading my book, for engaging with this book so thoughtfully. And I really do hope that it reaches more audiences, because ultimately, this story is about so many things beyond Islam. It's about, what does grief look like? What does having a good friend, do for us? What happens when a child has troubled and dysfunctional parents? And those are just a few of the many things that are universal, that transcend Afaf's identity of being Arab and Muslim. So once again, thank you so much, and I hope you will continue to share this book. Grazie.